In an obvious case of voter suppression, Alabama has announced that this week it would stop issuing driver's licenses in counties where 75% of registered voters are black. Oh, here we go. Now, due to what they call budget cuts, Alabama law enforcement agencies said that 31 satellite DMV offices would no longer have access to driver's license examiners, meaning that residents will need to travel to other counties to apply to get a driver's license. Now, well, you could say, come on, Jeff, budget cuts, man. Budget cuts. What are you going to do? That doesn't mean they're trying to do voter suppression. We just can't afford it. Alabama can't afford it. Bullshit. Bullshit. It is voter suppression. It's not a coincidence that this move comes just 1 year after the state decided to put voter photo ID laws into the books, into practice. 1 year. That's not a coincidence, dude. It's not a coincidence. All right, that law, like other photo ID laws, they require that people get a photo ID to vote, such as a driver's license. I gotta ask you guys, how is this not obvious? All right, how is this not obvious? It's only in places where a majority of black people happen to be registered to vote. 75%. It's not even like they're trying to hide their fucking racism on this issue. Let's target the areas, the counties where you have 75% of African American voter registration. No, that doesn't look racist at all. We can claim budget cuts and nobody will notice. You know what, assholes? We have noticed. This is blatant. This is absolutely blatant. All right. Look, the fact is that this is going to make it harder for people to vote. It's going to make it harder for them to get the ID. Now, conservatives will come out and tell you that it's okay, man. You can just go out and get an ID. It's easy. Just drive to the DMV, get your ID. It's cool. What are you doing without an ID anyway? You should have one. It's fine. You know, it's funny, the people who don't want the government to track their guns are okay with everybody having to get a state-sponsored ID to vote. Interesting how that works. Apparently, they're in favor of some government tracking, but other government tracking they don't like. Fucking hypocrisy. Okay. Now, the problem with some these voter restrictions in these areas, well, these are inner city poor areas, right? A lot of them are, and it's very difficult for somebody to get to the polls if they don't have, for example, a vehicle, all right? And now, when you get make it so that it's harder to get that ID, where you have to travel to another county, which it could be a significant trip, a significant expense, to be able to go to that other county to get your ID. Not to mention the waiting. If anybody's ever been to the DMV, you know how long it takes to wait. Sometimes you spend a fucking hour in there. Now they're going to close even more and make the waits even longer just to get an ID. Talk about putting barriers in the way of people's right to vote. It's voter suppression. It's plain and simple. You can't call it anything else. It's voter suppression. They're essentially making it harder for African Americans and poor inner city whites to be able to get a voter ID or an ID of any kind. It's ridiculous. If there is a case study out there of why we need Section 4 of the Voting Rights Act reinstated, this is it. Now, the Supreme Court said, well, you can have it back, but you've got to get Congress to do it. You know what's going to happen? You think Congress is going to take it up? Congress isn't going to take it up. Congress can't even get along to figure out what kind of fucking sandwich they want to get. Much less the Voting Rights Act, which a lot of Republicans out there, GOP members, say, we don't need it. Racism's over. We got a black president. What are you talking about? You liberals, you're the real racists. We're not. Except in fucking Alabama, where they just instituted this. Close DMV offices in order to make it harder for people to get IDs so they can vote. And then doing this voter ID bullshit. The court got it wrong. The court got it wrong. Look, you want to talk about bad Supreme Court decisions? This is one of them. That Citizens United. These are bad court decisions. How can they argue? And this is what they argued, right? That it's no longer necessary to have the Voting Rights Act. To have the pre-clearance section, which is the one they gutted. how can they argue that you don't need that? You don't need government oversight in places that are significantly or have a significant history of racism. They have been incredibly racist in the past, putting up barriers. And they're not over that, as we've just seen in every place that was watched by the pre-clearance section of the Voting Rights Act. They're instituting photo ID laws. Voter ID laws. All in order, well, of course, it's just to be able to, get verification in our system because it's so plagued with so much fraud and abuse. People voting twice. Most of the time where you have voter fraud, it's usually, and there's been documented cases, somebody trying to prove that there's more voter fraud by actually perpetrating voter fraud. And it's usually someone who agrees that we need voter restrictions. Usually a Republican. God, there's so much hypocrisy. These places, these states, Alabama being one of them, have a history of keeping African Americans from the polls. And now they're doing exactly the same thing all over again. And once again, the Supreme Court made the argument that it's not necessary in 2015. Or I'm sorry, 2013 when they made the decision. We don't need pre-clearance anymore. There's no racism anymore. There are other ways to handle these issues, said the majority opinion of the Roberts Court. We haven't learned a damn thing. Those places haven't changed. They're still as racist as ever. And that they're going to claim that it's changed. We no longer need that. Well, here's your proof that nothing has changed. We still need pre-clearance. Here's your proof. Now look, you want to know why they do this? It's not for verification in our election. It's not to keep our election system pristine. Okay? This is simply there to block votes because they cannot win with their ideas. Republicans out there are complaining, you're just giving away free stuff to get votes. You're giving away free stuff. Well, you're also giving away free stuff. You're giving away tax cuts to the rich. How that's not a freebie, I don't know. But that's what you're giving away. And they can't win on that idea because tax cuts for the rich, they don't benefit anybody else but the rich. It doesn't trickle down. It trickles down all over our heads, but not in the way that we want it. That's not the kind of golden shower we're interested in. They do it because they can't win on their ideas. Tax cuts for the rich and deregulation. You can't win with the American public on that. And so they have to resort to doing this. They have to resort to blocking access to the polls, making it harder to vote. And the people that do this, to come up with these plans, they're un-American. They're anti-American. They're anti-American ideals. They don't believe in the concept of self-governance or representative democracy. They don't believe in that. And if you don't believe in those fundamental concepts of America, then by definition, you are anti-American. You cannot get more un-American than that.